They didn't target a missile. They targeted an ecosystem. Ukraine spent roughly $8 million to erase a $6+ billion Archnik site without crossing the border. In the next minutes, you'll see how a 10-day intelligence siege boxed launchers, fuel units, and calibration gear into a 1,900-foot kill zone. We'll break down the thermal tells inside the underground base, the ADM-160 MELJ decoy play that bent an S-400's gaze upward, and the JSSMER pads that rode 40 to 60 feet off the deck to crack the vents. You click for tactics. Stay for the method that turned 25% damage into total loss. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. You think a buried site is quiet. So why did the ground stay hot on nights when the air bit hard and frost held? The surface cooled. The subsurface bled heat like a furnace in a sealed room. That was the first crack in the mask. Ukraine knew clipping missiles on the road was a tax, not a win. To cut real capacity, they needed the full stack in one box at the same time. Launchers, command trucks, solid fuel units, calibration rigs, all the parts that turned tubes into a cycle. That meant patience in a surveillance net that didn't blink. The base practiced dispersion. Gears split across grids, sleeping light, moving often. That doctrine forces you to hunt for the rare maintenance window when everything returns to the barn. Miss that window, and you're back to swatting tails while the head grows back. So the analysts watched without announcing they were watching. They layered passes from commercial satellites, pulled long loiters with quiet drones, and built a SIGINT baseline that tracked who spoke, how often, and for how long. Each feed had gaps. Together, they gave shape. When one eye blinked, the other stayed open. Thermal became the truth teller. Nights dropped into the teens, yet the ground above underground corridors held a warm haze. Transformers stamped out a steady square of heat. Cooling cycles ran odd, peaking after midnight, dipping at dawn, then rising again as if someone was spinning up tests and letting them breathe. Surface camouflage did its job against cameras. It did nothing against physics. You read the layout by reading habits. Heavy gear cuts grooves, and fuel bows to schedule. Tracks curved in, lingered, then arced out along the same berm lines. Tankers topped off at repeat intervals. Service bay doors opened for short bursts, then held. Dwell time told you which bay housed launchers, which fed solid fuel, which cradle held calibration gear. All of it clustered inside a circle you could walk in under 10 minutes. Noise fought back. Weather smeared the thermal picture. Decoy heaters puffed fake signatures. Power downs tried to flatten the graph. So the team filtered by persistence and phase. Real work looks like a drumbeat with slight human error, a lag here, an overlap there. Fakes tend to be too clean or too loud. The SIGINT floor shifted at the same time the heat rose. Voice nets tightened. Data links stayed up longer, but spoke less. That mix, high load, disciplined chatter, hinted that crews were inside checklists, not on parade. When the third night hit with the same high-load spike and the same comms change, the model locked. This wasn't rehearsal. This was maintenance and checkout with everything co-located. From there, coordinates were the least interesting part. They built a clock-stamped floor plan. Vents mapped to corridors by the way heat plumed and settled. Breaker rooms showed as rectangles that glowed hard, then leveled. Load-bearing seams revealed themselves as cold lines that framed the hot zones. You don't aim at a roof when the weak point is the throat. That plan turned aim points into a chain. One warhead for the vent run, one for the corridor elbow, one for the breaker room, one for the seam that holds the bay together. If the first breach opens the lungs, the second overpressures the spine. They had the window, and they had the map. The timing mattered more than the steel. Strike now, and you erase capacity, not cash. But the first move wasn't a shot at the ground. It was a ghost in the upper air that made every radar dish look the wrong way while the real work stayed low and silent. If you wanted an S-400 to chase ghosts, you'd point its eyes up and make the sky look crowded. Not with fighters. With echoes that act like a bomber stack and demand attention now. The deception layer started in the thin air. A wave of MELD-class decoys lit up radar with the right skin, speed, and altitude to read as a heavy strike package. That forces retasking. Surveillance radars pivot. Track files climb the priority list. Crews do what doctrine tells them. Treat the biggest radar shapes at altitude like the main threat and feed shooters the cleanest tracks. Here's the tension you exploit. Air defenses live by profile. Get the profile wrong and the wrong guns stare at the wrong sky. The network watches angles, pulse returns, climb rates. It sorts by habit. Break the habit and you break the kill chain. You don't need to blind it. You just need its eyes looking elsewhere for long enough to open a door. MELD behavior makes that door. They mimic RF talk like the real thing, follow scripted routes that cross and diverge, and time their legs so the picture screams multi-axis rate. No pilots risked. No bomb bays needed. Only a radio skin and a flight plan that feels true to the operator's working scopes in a dark van. Defenders react in sequence. Radar modes shift from wide search to tighter track and then to fire control. Engagement rules click in. Interceptors get cued for the high shelf while the ground picture thins out. You can watch it in the data. Channels fill, tracking beams lock, uplinks stay busy. The system is doing its job, just not for the fight that matters. Meanwhile, the real punch stays low. 4 JSSMERS ride the land at 40 to 60 feet, using inertial NAV to stay precise and IR scene match to confirm the aim. They hunt heat and shape, not just a dot on a map, but the way a vent breathes or a corridor stays warm at 3 a.m. Radar sees less at that height. The missiles don't need radar. They already have the map. They don't aim for a thick lid. They aim for the soft parts in the machine. Vent shafts that pull flame through a facility. Load-bearing corridors that hold the bays together. Breaker rooms that feed power and give you square edges to break. The goal is not a hole in concrete. It's a path for pressure. First impact punches along. Delay fuses let the warhead detonate inside, where overpressure has no escape. The blast runs the corridor and slams doors against hinges. Second and third hits bend the spine, support shear. A roof sags, then gives. Heat races into storage bays stacked with fuel and ordnance, and the site turns on itself. Now the cascade. Fire crosses cable runs and eats control gear. Solid fuel units flare. Launchers near open service positions cook off and strip their own tubes. Calibration stations melt into the floor they were set to hold. The ceiling falls in sheets. What looked like separate rooms becomes one broken chamber. Planners asked for partial damage. Timing and anatomy delivered an ecosystem kill. One window, one grid, one pass. The bill sat in the millions. The loss landed in the billions. That gap is the point. You trade decoys and a handful of standoff missiles for time your opponent can't buy back. The site goes dark. But what stays dark is the supply line needed to rebuild the bays you just collapsed. Sanctions turn lead times into dead time, and dead time is a wound that spreads. Hitting parts hurts. Collapsing the ecosystem ends the cycle. Planning beat hardware because timing forced every critical unit into one kill zone, and the strike cut a production timeline that sanctions can't patch on command. That is industrial attrition. Attack the factory chain, not the single launcher. Would you trade $8 million to punch a $5 billion hole in an opponent's arsenal? If you value tactics over hype, subscribe and comment your choice below. What would you do with that budget and that window? The next war isn't won by the biggest missile, but by the cleanest sequence. We'll track the sequences that matter.